Welcome, everyone. This is the Buttercup Podcast where we talk about early childhood topics. My name is Marisa Macy, and I'm the host of the Buttercup Podcast. I'm super excited today because I have with me Andy Rozak. He is the founder and chief executive officer of the Institute for Childhood Preparedness, where he equips early childhood professionals and child-centered organizations nationwide with practical emergency preparedness training, tools, and resilience strategies. He is also the founder of the Head Start East, a nonprofit organization founded in 2025 to provide high-quality professional development, technical assistance, and events for the early childhood education field. Since 2018, Andy has supported the Region 2 Head Start Association in advancing preparedness, health, safety, and environmental health initiatives across New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. A trusted advisor to leading organizations including the Sesame Street and Communities and the U.S. Marine Corps. Andy has delivered training to the early childhood professionals in all 50 states and 35 Native American tribal nations. He also serves as an adjunct professor in the School of Community and Environmental Health at Old Dominion University. Andy began his career in the Chicago area as a firefighter, paramedic, and certified hazardous materials technician. He holds a Juris Doctor and Master of Public Administration from Southern Illinois University, a bachelor's degree in fire science management, and is a graduate of the Harvard University's Early Education Leadership Program. Uh, we're, uh, we're both graduates of that program. Go Harvard! He is admitted to the practice of law in Illinois, the District of Columbia, and before the U.S. Supreme Court. Oh, I said that wrong. He's practiced law. He's a lawyer in Illinois, D.C., and before the U.S. Supreme Court. Andy is the proud father of 2 young daughters, and he lives in the Washington, D.C. area with his family. Welcome, Andy.
Welcome. Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate the warm welcome.
Well, thank you for being here. And how did you get started in this field?
Well, you kind of heard the little synopsis about me, and I've done a lot of interesting things along the way. And the kind of thread through them all is really just trying to make communities and families better prepared. And, in emergency preparedness, we always think about those underserved populations. And quite frankly, it's usually the bookends, right? It's the very old and the very young, and people who just can't take care of themselves and are reliant on others. So I was doing a bunch of crazy jobs, as you mentioned. I was a firefighter paramedic for about a decade, and then I went to law school, and then I was working in the public health field as a senior advisor. I got a job out in Washington, D.C. I worked for the United States Senate for a couple of years. And from there, when President Obama got elected, I actually got a chance to join his administration. I worked with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And I was working on, again, preparedness issues and whatnot. And was just really laser focused on, how do we protect those that really can't care for themselves? So as a paramedic, I got to tell you, like some of the scariest calls you'll ever get are the young, the pediatric population, because again, they can't communicate. They're just like, they're really tough medically because like they're good until they're not, and they kind of fall off a cliff, right? So it's just an area that like has always intrigued me, and it's always been an interest of mine, making sure our youngest friends have the tools, the resources, and all that stuff that they need. And then after I left the administration, I got a chance to be the senior preparedness advisor for the Super Bowl, which was a really cool opportunity. And then from there, I was back in DC and became a senior director over at Child Care Aware of America. And that's when I really started digging deep into early childhood. So I was over at Child Care Aware of America for 3 years. And then I said, you know what? The need is so great. let's just start the Institute for Childhood Preparedness and let's focus on this, full time. And here we are, gosh, what is that? Almost 8, 9 years later, still doing it. So the need out there is very great. And I'm humbled and honored to get to work with so many wonderful early childhood professionals throughout the country. And I've even got to do work internationally. I was in Japan for a whole month last year. I've done stuff in Canada and in all 50 states, as you mentioned. So it's just been a really amazing opportunity, and it's just so gratifying knowing that I'm trying to help the youngest and help the folks that are really dedicating their lives to serve our young children out there.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for all that work and preparing uh, uh, the world for children. And students of mine watch this or listen to this podcast, and some of them have experience with children, and some are brand new to the field. What are some tips to prepare for emergencies?
Well, it's really tough. I got to tell you, when you look at the early childhood workforce, we have a tremendous amount of challenges, right? First off, we're not recognized, I think, as we should be, as actual professionals. And there's a big movement that needs to happen, and it's sort of organically happening. But, when you look at things like the pay scale and everything else, like we're obviously lagging very far behind our colleagues at the middle school, the elementary, the high school, the collegiate level. And we really need to have that kind of unifying voice of, hey, we're professionals, we need to be compensated and such. And I would even argue that the work that you're doing with a 2 month old, quite frankly, it's way more challenging, way more difficult than with a 12-year old, right? And it's a whole different skill set. Um, the unfortunate thing is, as time has went on, we've seen so many regulations. There's so much regulatory requirements now in our early childhood workforce that it's almost overwhelming to folks, right? You get into the field because you want to help kids, you want to be with kids, you enjoy it, you want to go through all the developmental milestones and all this. And then there's just like all these things that you never thought you would need to learn about that get kind of piled on. Now, obviously, we need CPR, we need safe sleep, we need kind of those basic foundational pieces, of course. But then you start to think about insurance, right? And you almost have to become like an insurance expert, especially if you're trying to open your own center, or if you're a family provider, all that kind of stuff. And the same thing I think goes on with the emergency preparedness requirements. All 50 states, the District of Columbia, here where I'm at, Washington, D.C., Guam, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, all 50 states and all the territories have emergency preparedness requirements for our early childhood workforce. And sadly, most folks have no idea what to do. And I think it's kind of an unfair burden on our early childhood educators to somehow think that they're now going to be emergency preparedness experts without any training, without any guidance, without any kind of, help out there. And they're so busy day to day that it's kind of a unfair, mandate that's put on them. So I think, really looking at, and that's why we exist, right? We work with programs every single day to help them get prepared, to help them write their plans, to help them do drills and training and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's probably the biggest misnomer. Like, we're not necessarily writing the emergency plan that's required by licensing. Like, we're not writing it for licensing. I think people take a little bit of a view that's maybe a little bit the wrong view, quite frankly. Like, that document's not for licensing. Is it a requirement? Yes, of course. But really, that document is for you, right? It's for you, it's for your program. It's on the worst day of your life when some kind of emergency or disaster is happening. It's your plan, it's your guide, right? So the programs that do really well are the programs that write that plan with an eye towards reality. So you don't put stuff in your plan just because it sounds good or you think that's what licensing wants to hear. You actually write a plan that is workable for you in your organization. And of course, you can't just write it and then stick it up on the shelf and say, okay, we're done with that. Don't have to think about that again. It's really this whole, process of the continual improvement, which we hear all about. Hey, we want good programs. We want access to programs. We want quality programs. And a key part of that quality is making sure that we are verifying, updating, vetting what is actually in our plan. And we have the perfect opportunity every month because, again, pretty much every jurisdiction mandates we do a fire drill at least every month. But it's a really good idea to, take out your plan and say, here's what it says on paper. Is this really what I'm doing in practice? Because as a lawyer, I'll tell you, heaven forbid something bad happens. What's the first thing we're going to do after the bad thing happens? The lawsuits are going to start flying, and we're going to subpoena and ask for all your records. We're going to interview you. We're going to depose you. We're going to do all sorts of document review. And it looks really bad if something has happened at your program. So you already kind of look like you did something wrong, even if it was totally innocent. But you've kind of got that, air about like, oh, they did something wrong. A kid got hurt or injured or heaven forbid killed. And then we get your plan and literally we read it back to you. So this is the plan that you wrote. So on the day in question, when the bad thing happened, did you do A? Did you do B? Did you do C? Whatever your plan says. And think of kind of how foolish and how bad that looks on the witness stand if you can't say yes, right? So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is the plan that you wrote. And on the day in question, you didn't even follow your own plan. No wonder why this kid got hurt or injured or whatever, right? So, I do think like we misunderstand the point behind the emergency plan. I think we misunderstand the audience and why we're actually doing it. And I think we really downplay the importance of it because, again, documentation is everything when you think about emergencies and disasters and especially in the legal setting. So just a couple of, just thoughts off the top of my head about kind of like where it's at, where the gaps are, and maybe how we should approach it a little bit differently, if that makes some sense.
Yes. So, in your when I read your bio, the Institute for Childhood Preparedness does training, has tools, and could you give an example of what a training might look like? And what's the most popular training? I'm guessing it's writing plans, but I have no idea.
Well, so it's interesting. The most popular training is our active shooter course, quite frankly. And it's a course that we developed over 10 years ago because nothing existed. And I got to tell you, like, it's very different on what you would do for an intruder or an active shooter or an active threat at an early childhood program versus what in the world you would do at a college or a high school, right? So we looked around. I did a nationwide survey. It's a publication somewhere out there. I forget what journal it's in, but basically we looked at a big sample. I think it was over 5,000 childcare programs, and I say that holistically. So family providers, Head Start, center-based, religious-based, exempt, non-exempt, the whole thing. And what we found was less than half. I think it was 43, 45% actually said they had a plan and were prepared for some kind of an active shooter incident or things like that. Whereas 91% said they were prepared for a fire, right? So I was looking and said, man, we got to figure this out. And this is back, in the day when we were getting, and we're still getting, 500, 600, 700 mass shootings, four or more people shot, by the way, 600 mass shootings a year. And sadly, I've been seeing this get closer and closer to our early childhood programs. So just because you're working at a childcare program or a Head Start, don't think you're immune to these violent acts, right? We see it, quite frankly, we see it every week with, parents getting divorced, people breaking up, custody battles, court orders, the whole thing. And, even we've seen a lot recently with just employees, because domestic violence, it's tough, right? You can go sleep somewhere else for a couple of nights, maybe stay at a friend's house, stay at your parents' house, go to a hotel. But it's really difficult to change jobs, especially if you're going from two incomes down to one. You can't exactly just quit your job. So we've seen a lot of the, violence and incidents happening either from families that are, at your program that are suddenly going through marital problems, or we see kind of as a personal level, like a staff member breaks up with their boyfriend. And then the staff member knows, like I'm working here, so your ex knows where you work, and they just kind of show up like, oh, I want to reconcile with you or whatever. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of crazy things that go on out there, and the active shooter course is by far our most popular. But certainly we do, fire safety, we do cyber security, we do home visit safety for our friends at Head Start that actually go out and do home visits in the community. We do a whole culture of safety, talking about how you infuse the whole safety mantra into your organization. We've got a legal preparedness course that we do. So, we try to be holistic about kind of what are all the threats out there? What are the tools and the resources that we need? I wrote a de-escalation course about a year ago. Just again, how do you deal with people that come in that are agitated? How do you lower the temperature so bad things don't happen? So those are all the things that we're always looking for. And the cool thing is, knowing so many people, and I mean, we're literally in gosh, 3 to 5 early childhood programs every week as we travel the country. So we met like a tremendous amount of wonderful people, and we're always getting, hey, could you do a course on this? Or hey, this just happened to us. What should I do? Or whatever. So it's really cool to be, developing courses really that the field is asking for, and then that can really be helpful for the field. It's not some generic training off the shelf that, has never been in the childcare program. This is truly coming from early childhood educators saying, hey, we need this, and let's make sure it's a training that's actionable that we can put to use, the next day after the training.
Yes. Well, and the HBO documentary that you have, did you want to share uh, what that is?
Yeah, so that was interesting. So I don't know if it's the pleasure, but the privilege maybe. I don't know what the right adjective here is, but yeah, I've gotten to be in two documentaries over the past couple of years. One was the government of Denmark actually sent a film crew over to follow us around and figure out, because they don't really have the active shooter threat problem in over in Europe, oh, really anywhere else, quite frankly, in the world. So they came over and just wanted to know, like, what are you doing over here to keep kids safe? Like, what's the new thoughts? What's the leading practices? All that. So that was a very interesting experience with them. And then yeah, HBO reached out and wanted to do a documentary. It's called Thoughts and Prayers. It came out a few months ago. And it just follows kind of the whole active shooter industry. And the hard thing is they don't tell you what these documentaries are about. They're just like, we're interested in you. Can we come hang out and film what you're doing? So I'm a very trusting person. Maybe I'll get burned on that one of these days, but I didn't know kind of what narrative they were trying to patch together. I didn't know who else they were, hanging out with. So in the Thoughts and Prayers documentary, we're, the only organization serving young kids. Obviously, I think that might be true worldwide, quite frankly. I don't know of anyone else that does what we do with our expertise. Um, but there's also some really, I'm trying to be polite. There's also some really kind of outliers. Let's say that. Is that polite? That are just, they're just too intense. You don't like, look, we do fire drills every month. You don't need to go light the building on fire to do a fire drill, right? It's not how anybody learns. You don't learn when you're scared. And the same approach with the active threat, active shooter stuff. Like I've never done, um, look, yeah, I have done the hardcore stuff, right? As a first responder, we train hard, right? But that's reality. Like you're going to be in the line of fire. You're going to be in really tough situations. Our law enforcement friends do that. Our military does that. But that's the environment we work in every single day. We kind of are used to that, if that makes any sense. Um, we don't do that with early childhood. We don't do that with teachers. We don't do that with, normal businesses because that's not really reality. I don't want you to get shot with a paintball gun or get fake blood poured all over yourself or what, like you just, learn that way. That's not helpful. You're becoming more traumatized than trained, I think, in that approach. And, our training is all about, empowerment. It's all about things that you can literally do with the restraints that you're under. It's about, what is the reality of working in a room with again, a 2 month old versus a 2 year old versus a 5 year old. And as you know, and I'm sure your audience knows, my gosh, the difference just between what a 2 month old can do, a 2 year old and a 5 year old is massive, right? So, it's an interesting course. It's definitely not generic. We do it all custom. We come out on site. We do site assessments. We work with the early childhood programs to really craft something that's unique to their program. Because I've literally been in tens and tens of thousands of programs all over the world. And if you've seen one, you've seen one, right? We're all so darn different. So this kind of cookie cutter, one size fits all approach, it just doesn't work in early childhood. And I tell my clients that, like, I really want to come out. I want to get to know you. I want to get to know your staff. I want to get to know your buildings, and I want to make a plan that will work for you. So at the end of the day, you have something that's really actionable and really empowering that can help you in an emergency. So that's kind of the fun part, like, and why I get to be on the road so much is because we're doing stuff custom for you. I don't want you to, watch some generic video and say, well, my doors swing in, my doors swing out. I don't have doors. I have half doors. My doors are all glass. I'm in a gymnasium. I don't have any, it's like all these things that you see. I had one the other day. It was in an old racquetball court. That was a weird one, right? And everything else. I think the craziest one I've seen is in Oklahoma, there was one that was a 24-hour-a-day childcare program inside of a casino, which was pretty wild. But it was the only way they would get staff to come and work at the casino. They needed somewhere for their kids to go, and they were really doing a great job. It was a really good quality program. But that was it was pretty wild. And again, I always think like, I never say never because like, every day is a different one. I'm going out in a couple of weeks to California and working with a few more tribal nations, and some of those are, I don't know, I don't even know if rural describes it, quite honestly. Like it is frontier, it is isolated, it is an hour and a half from, the nearest law enforcement agency. In some cases, running water isn't a given, electricity isn't a given. Like it is, to say it's rural probably doesn't do it justice. So, but that's kind of the fun part. Like every day is a little bit different, and everybody's got unique challenges, and it's fun to be able to take everything we've seen for all the years and all the places we've been and try to, bring it to bear to solve the problems and really make a concrete, actionable plan, if that makes some sense.
Yes. So your institute does training, technical assistance, and you help the field with classroom resource management. And I was just as you're talking about preparing and avoiding emergencies, if you can avoid it, prevention. But when you're in the thick of it, you might not know exactly what to do. But when you have a plan, when you've been trained, I have a brother who's a pilot, and when he was going to school, right before he graduated, I went at the end of his semester and spent some time with him. And he said, "Hey, you want to come to some of my classes with me, Marisa?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be fun." And so we went to the first class was turbo engines. And that was like, after the professor said the first three words, I didn't know anything. He could have been speaking Greek. I had no idea what he was saying. But then the other class that I went with him to was cockpit resource management. And that's what you're talking about with classrooms. Resource management. We have to use communication and all of our tools to be able to prevent and also uh, step in when intervention is needed. And so that class was so interesting. The professor was talking about different emergencies that had happened that were newsworthy. And one of them was uh, some pilots who were flying a big, huge aircraft in Kuala Lumpur. And they were communicating with the air traffic controller. And the common language was English, but the person that they were talking to, it was very textbook English. And the
Mm.
pilots were using slang and shorthanded ways of saying things that probably weren't like in a textbook how you would say it in English. Like anyway, there was communication problem, and because of that conflict of being able to communicate clearly, the airplane hit a mountain in Kuala Lumpur, and
Oh my gosh.
everybody died. And so uh, the the professor was explaining when we don't have good communication, it could be life or death.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about writing plans that are clear, that are observable, that are actionable, it's so important to have that. So in addition, so I'm talking about writing, you've written some books, and you have written tools that are published. You want to talk a little bit about what you've done with your own scholarship in this field?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. So, yeah, very blessed. I've written a three-part series, three books. The first one is Preschool Preparedness for an Active Shooter. So, talking about all the things to do to keep your program safe from this horrible threat, which, I wish we didn't have, but sadly, it's doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon. So yeah, it's a lot of case studies. It's a lot of, again, concrete information that you can put into play immediately with your program. And again, I live in the reality of the real world here, right? So like it's not like a book that tells you go out and spend, $10,000 on a, like I work on early childhood. I know we don't have $10,000 laying around. So, it's really like, what are things you can do low cost, but, high impact that you can do to make your program safer. The second book is Preschool Preparedness for an Emergency, which again kind of talks about our plans, our policies, our procedures, our drills, leading practices, and kind of all of that. And then for 3 years of my life, I lived in Puerto Rico in the Virgin Islands after Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And I had my job was to help those programs rebuild, recover, and reopen. So I was writing a whole book. The third book in this series is preschool preparedness for after a disaster, and just it's something you don't really think about too much, but there's a tremendous amount of work we can do today. Heaven forbid we ever need it, but there's a tremendous amount of work we can do today in case something does happen. And again, it's not like groundbreaking stuff, but it's do you have the right insurance? Do you have contractors on standby? Do you have a generator? Do you have an evacuation site? You were just talking about communication. Do you have a communication plan with your families if you do have to evacuate? What does that look like? So yeah, I lived there for 3 years. We didn't have really power for almost 11 months, so it was a very austere environment. It was very challenging, and of course, it was very hot without air conditioning and fans and electricity. And what was interesting, I was, in the middle of writing that book, and then, COVID hit, right? And COVID kind of changed the world. So I wasn't traveling near as much and kind of got my wings clipped for a little bit of time there as the world shut down. So I was with my wife. We moved out of Washington, D.C. Her family had a little like beach house down in North Carolina. So we moved down to the beach house, thought, oh, this might be a fun place to kind of ride out the COVID pandemic. We're not in DC. We're not in the middle of the city with everybody going on, all the craziness. And eventually ended up getting pregnant, and we, welcomed our first child in the middle of COVID. Um, Amazingly, 3 weeks after our first child was born, our little tiny community, Sunset Beach, North Carolina, got hit by the first tornado it had had in, gosh, almost 90 years or something ridiculous. And it destroyed 84 homes, including our own. And it literally killed our three neighbors that were literally just across the street. So we were that close to being killed. I mean, it was a horrific experience. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. You heard all the things that you always, hear about, like the freight trains and all that kind of craziness. And there we were huddled in basically a closet with our 3-week-old baby in the middle of a COVID pandemic at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to survive this horrible event, this tornado. So I was kind of like writing this whole book on recovery, right? And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh. So I called up Kaplan. They're the folks that published the books for us. And just said, look, I'm going to need an extension. There's no way I don't, like, our house is destroyed. I have a 3-week-old baby. I've got nowhere to go. And, we still had our house up in D.C., but the challenge was if you went to D.C., which is a good 6, 7 hours away, nothing can get done, right? So you can't meet with the city, you can't get the permits, you can't meet with the insurance adjusters, you can't meet with the roofers trying to put your roof back on, all the things. So we couldn't really just like up and leave. We had to kind of stay nearby. So we ended up staying in Myrtle Beach, and it's about a 30-minute drive, I suppose. But the insurance company, like, they gave us like, the tiniest little hotel room you can imagine. And as you can know, like during COVID, like first off, you didn't really want to be in a hotel, but certainly with a brand new 3-week-old baby, you don't go from a nice house to a hotel room. I mean, there's just not even the basic necessities of, where are you going to store the breast milk? How are you going to cook a meal? How are you going to, I mean, the hotel room didn't even have room for like a bassinet or a crib or anything, right? So it was, to say it was challenging is probably an understatement, but I will say I think the third book there, the Recovery from the Disaster book, I think it's much better than it was going to be, very frankly, because you talk about mental health and impacts, and obviously there was some of that. I've worked in disasters my whole life. But it's different, it really is different. And believe me, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, it wasn't luxury. You would come back to your, hotel, which was running on maybe a generator, maybe not. Didn't, no carpeting, and obviously a shower wasn't always guaranteed. So I'm not trying to say like we were, at the Ritz-Carlton living the high life. Like that wasn't the case at all. We were working our butts off. We were really trying our best for everybody that would had their lives destroyed. But it was different because just mentally you could come back and kind of check out. Whereas when this happens to you personally, there's none of that, right? Like 24 hours a day, you're thinking about it and you're impacted by it and you're worried, I mean, even just mental health wise, like am I letting my 3 week old baby down? Am I being the best father I can be? Am I doing all I can for my family? And it's just a very different picture. So I think the book again is much richer because of the experience. I wish we didn't have to go through it, but thank God we survived and are alive and everything else. And I think often about all of our neighbors that didn't have the same outcome, especially the 3 that got killed and so many more. I think we had about 84 homes that were damaged. And again, it was COVID. So like you couldn't really get people to work. The supply chain was really tight. You couldn't get supplies. You couldn't, get roofing materials or even basic 2x4s. Um, and the amount of people that come in these disasters, and I've seen that again crazily in the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and Texas, and the Florida Panhandle, and the Florida Key, all these places I've worked. Um, but there's people that come in the aftermath of these disasters that try to rip you off, and they'll come in and they'll be like, hey, and it's really sad. I mean, you're not in a good spot and you're looking for people to help. And they come in and they sell you this dream like, well, we could come and get started in repairing your roof or whatever tomorrow. Just give us a $3,000 check. That'll cover your insurance, your down payment, and we'll get started. And guess what? You give them, and this happened to several of my neighbors. You give them $3,000 and you never see them again. They're gone. And it became such a big problem that, the police actually were posted in the neighborhood and they would not let anybody in unless were a legitimate contractor. And it was crazy to see like out of state license, like people from Ohio, people from Iowa, people from all over the country that, again, they don't live there. So what are they doing there? Right. And that's one of the things we do talk about in the book, like having that list of vetted contractors that are there today is really important because if they're there today, they're in your community, right? They're probably going to be there tomorrow. It's not like somebody's just jumping in the car and from Pennsylvania driving to North Carolina and taking your $3,000 check and leaving. It's an actual established, reputable business that's maybe part of the Chamber of Commerce or whatever the heck whatever have you there. But
Well,
again,
and you
Marissa, it's
bring
just
up,
stuff you don't think about, right? What in the world? I'm just
yeah,
trying to
you
get my
don't think
life
about it.
together. I can't imagine somebody ripping me off, but here it is.
Yeah.
It's happening.
And with those kinds of emergencies that you're talking about, natural disasters, active shooters, it's it's an entire community that is affected by this. It's an entire neighborhood of people, um, and there's things that happen before, during, and after. And the recovery is uh, a unique time where it's so fragile for the entire community. My husband, daughter, and I used to live in Florida, and I'll never forget our first hurricane. Uh, Watching the news before the hurricane was coming, it was so scary. We didn't know what to expect. It's not like just a big heavy rain. Like it was so scary. Like they were talking about the cone of uncertainty, and you'd like watch where the hurricane's supposed to be going, and it was like a target, like right on our community, and it was so scary. And so like leading up to when the actual hurricane hit, it was like so much emotion and fear, and then it happened, and then what happened afterwards, it was just like, oh my gosh, until you experience an earthquake or a hurricane or something big like a tornado or a uh, you just don't know like what communities go through. And you talked a lot about the importance of neighbors. And Fred Rogers always talked about look for the helpers, teaching the children to look for the helpers. And not everybody is a helper. And some people are bad people and they prey on communities that are experiencing a disaster like this. So I didn't realize until you just said that about just some of the dangers that could happen during the recovery phase. So that's great. You wrote that book, and it has uh, your scholarship, but also your experience and knowing what it's like to live through that. Well,
Well, and the other thing we think about really in these communities, recovery can't begin until kids have a safe place to go, you know? And
yes,
I've worked a lot, and you talk about Florida. I remember being in the Florida Keys, helping a lot of the programs down there after a hurricane, just trying to get reopened. And I will say, hats off to the Florida Department of Early Learning, the Florida licensing folks. I was literally, partnered up with somebody from licensing, and we would go program to program, just seeing like assessing, can you reopen? What do you need? Luckily, I had a pretty good, list of donations and people willing to help. But, one of the things in Florida that's required for licensing is sunshades, obviously, right? We don't want kids to be outside and getting burned and, cancer and all this stuff. What's one of the first things to get destroyed in a hurricane? The sunshades, right? So, technically, you're not able to operate unless you have something. But it was amazing. And, just licensing there was doing stuff that I hadn't seen other places in the country. And they were actually actively part of that solution, helping our childcare programs say, hey, look, if you're a family provider, your home is damaged, or you're a center and your center's damaged, like where else can we go in this community? Because again, the Florida Keys are pretty isolated. It's not quite being on an island, but it's close, right? So you think like Marathon Key and all those other ones that got hit pretty hard. And I remember, like, I was literally there with licensing, and in her passenger seat, I don't know how she even had this thing, but she had like a portable battery operated printer. And she was printing out temporary licenses for these childcare programs to operate on a temporary basis in these other spaces. So, like, we, reached out to a local church and they had some space. We reached out to a local high school that was, closed for the summer anyway. And they had some space they let us do. But, again, nobody was necessarily like coming and volunteering. This was all stuff you had to kind of proactively reach out and ask, like, hey, our childcare programs got destroyed here. Our community, our electrical workers, our contractors, our firefighters, our police officers, our garbage collectors. We none of it. Nobody can go back to work unless the kids have somewhere safe to go. Is it okay if we use your space to operate a temporary childcare? And hats off to Lutheran Disaster Services and Save the Children and so many of these other nonprofits that come in and help out in the aftermath of this too. They do wonderful work. But it's just those things you never really think about until you live it. And I will say, shout out. I get to play with Sesame Street quite a bit, which is fun as an advisor. And we did just shoot a two-part episode on hurricane preparedness. So episode one is preparing for the hurricane, so boarding things up and getting ready, getting our supplies. And then episode two is the aftermath and what it's like to kind of clean up when there's down trees and power lines and maybe some dangerous conditions in your community. And we're really lucky we had Post Malone as a guest star on those two episodes. So a great tool out there for our kiddos to, again, just to kind of think about what they're going through and process it and all that. And I love working with Sesame Street. It's so cool and it's just so much fun. They're such a great group. But those are out there too, as you mentioned, hurricanes. And of course, we're in hurricane season now. Hurricane season just keeps getting longer and longer, right? As the water continues to heat up and we see stronger and stronger hurricanes that are affecting the Atlantic and the Pacific. So, shout out to Sesame Street. And of course, shout out to Fred Rogers. Watching The Helpers is always something to think about too.
Yes. Well, and the Institute for Childhood Preparedness has resources and tools and training and technical assistance. And we'll put in the show notes links. You also have a blog and you also have early childhood chats. Do you want to tell us what that is all about?
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to find us, it's easy. We're over at icp.us. We also are over at childhoodpreparedness.org. But quite frankly, I found people can't spell preparedness. Uh, so I thought
It's a
ICP might
long
just be,
word.
it is a long word, right? So icp.us is a lot better. The only weird thing is now I get a lot of people thinking I'm like some kind of insane clown posse fan club or something, which is kind of odd, but whatever.
Clown?
Shout out to the Juggalos. We love it, right? So, insane clown posse, ICP, Institute for Childhood Preparedness, ICP. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, we also have a podcast that we do called Early Childhood Chats. We post every other week, and it's just been great. We get to have, experts in early childhood come on. We've had, so many wonderful, like Sesame Street's been on. I just had the governor's office in New Mexico on talking about how they're paying for universal child care for every citizen in New Mexico, which was really interesting. We had Georgetown on talking about mental health concerns in early childhood. We dive into different topics and try to get you the leading experts in the field to come on and say, hey, and talk about their research and really translate it into, what we're doing in the field every day. So we keep them about 45 minutes on average, I would say. It's a quick listen. It's on YouTube. It's on, all the different platforms, or you can find us at earlychildhoodchats.com. But Yeah, it's so much fun. And of course, you and Amy were on just recently. So I appreciate you guys coming on and talking about all the great
Yeah.
work you guys are doing as well. It was fun conversation we had.
Yes, yes. And thank you for the opportunity. I've only been a guest on two podcasts, yours and another one. So it was kind of fun to see how you do your podcast and it was and so one of the things you have on your podcast, Andy, that I want to start doing on mine is the rapid fire.
Oh boy, okay.
And
You
so
reap what you sow, right?
I have three for you. Two of them are the ones that you had on early childhood chats. So your favorite book, or
Oh, my
what you're reading
favorite
now?
book. So it's interesting that and I don't know how this even happened. My parents are always trying to declutter their house and just boxes and boxes of stuff that I didn't even know they had from my childhood, like shows up here randomly. So the other day we got another big box that was totally unexpected. And I've got, gosh, all the He-Man and G.I. Joe and all these toys from my childhood, which is kind of fun to look at. But it had these books, and I don't know if you'll remember them, but they were like the whole Mr. and Mrs. series. So it was like, gosh, Mr. Invisible and Mr. Know-It-All and Miss Happy and all these things. And we've been having a blast, quite frankly, reading them. So that's probably the current obsession in my household, looking at all those old books that I had as I was a kid. Um, yeah, so that's probably the favorite book right now, at least in our house. Of course, we still got like the classics of Amelia Bedelia is another one that always seems to come to the top. And then, of course, The Day You Were Born is always a good favorite that they. It's funny how kids, even the 2-year-old, she'll go and just, Daddy, I want you to read this book, and I wish I could like look in that little tiny mind and figure out what's going on. Why did you pick that book out of all these books that we have? But we love it. We're big book people. We don't do a lot of screen time. Maybe a Paw Patrol episode once a week or so. Although somehow the 5-year-old now she's into Transformers, and I'm not exactly sure how she knows what a Transformer is, but she's been asking a lot about Transformers, which I again a blast from my past, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And the second one is also from yours, early childhood chats. Fa What's on your playlist right now?
Ooh, good one. So I was over in I had a real like this is going to sound crazy, but this is kind of how my weeks are, right? So I flew out to California. I was up in San Jose and Oakland and San Francisco. I did training with a bunch of programs. And then I had to get over to do training in Iowa for the weekend. So it's hard to get from San Francisco to Iowa. Not a lot of direct flights. So I actually did a stopover in Las Vegas, which I love Las Vegas. It's a great city. My wife and I got married there. I love it. I love going there. It's harder to get there now that we have kids. So I laid over there because I could get a connecting flight. But I happened to have like one night. So I've been wanting to go to that Sphere, that new, beautiful venue they've got there. And it just so happened there was a show called Millennium, which I didn't know anything really about Millennium. Now I do listen to, kind of the EDM techno stuff like, Zed and Cascade and all those people. And he was kind of in that genre. So I thought, oh, I'll go check this thing out. And I got to tell you, if you haven't been to the Sphere, and they're building one, by the way, here in DC, like a smaller version, I guess, but it kind of ruins you because it is such an immersive experience that, I mean, in this show, like Millennium actually built the show for the Sphere. So it wasn't just like, the Eagles are in town and they're going to put a couple pictures up or whatever. Like this was a show that was literally built for the Sphere and it was so immersive and so amazing. So yeah, I've been kind of listening to Millennium on repeat, just kind of reliving that experience. But it was really good. I 10 out of 10. I would say if you can get tickets to the Sphere in Vegas, like it's definitely something. Get there early. Like get there 30 minutes or so before the show starts because honestly, you need time to acclimate. Like it's such a unique, weird environment that your body just doesn't know how to process it, quite frankly. But yeah, it was really cool. It was a little expensive, but definitely something unique and worth it, and probably one of the coolest things I've done in the last 6 months.
That's awesome. Last rapid fire movie,
Oh, wow. You
film.
know, to be honest, the last movie I saw in the theater, I think was Barbie. So it's been a while. Um, yeah, I don't
Well,
know. I
you
mean, you
you guys
mentioned
have
airplanes earlier. Like I'm a big like I love all that stuff, right? I grew up watching Airplane. Naked Gun is a good one. I think some of the funny ones with like Will Ferrell, like the Old School and those kind of movies. I'm not a scary. My sister is a crazy scary person, a scary movie person. Like she loves it. I'm kind of a wimp. I get scared by aliens and that kind of stuff. So I don't really like watch that. I more like tend towards the funny comedy and stuff like that. So definitely that kind of genre. The old schools, the Step Brothers, the that Happy Gilmore kind of stuff is probably what you'd find me watching versus some of the stuff. And honestly, I'm not too versed on the new stuff that's out there. So I did see they're making a redo of Spaceballs coming out next year, which is exciting. I'll be watching that. But I think we got a year or so to wait for that one. So yeah, sorry, I'm not much help on the movies. I haven't caught up with it really.
And the last question, Andy, is how can listeners follow you?
Oh my goodness. I'd love for you to follow us. Yeah, we're doing some fun stuff. The nonprofit Head Start East, which I founded last year, we've got a rockin' conference we do. It's an early childhood conference. It's unlike any conference you've been to. I bring 90 expert speakers. We do 120 sessions. It's in beautiful Puerto Rico, right on the beach. We start our day with some sunrise yoga. I buy pina coladas for everybody. We have salsa lessons. We have karaoke. So headstarteast.org is how you can stay tuned on that. The next conference there will be in April, so you got plenty of time to plan. I'd love to see you guys. We had 31 states that came last year. Isn't that crazy? 31 states. So,
Uh,
yeah, it's great, and it's a real meeting of the minds as far as all things early childhood. So
and
that's a
how
good place.
do you have registration on your website?
We will. We'll be putting out the call for speakers probably in I don't know. People are leaving for the summer, right? So I probably wait till end of July, August to put out the call for speakers because right now so many programs are closing for the summer and people are a little bit checked out with vacations and stuff. But yeah, certainly we'll have the call for speakers coming out in the next few weeks, and then registration will open up, and we'll have a good early bird deal for everybody. I've been doing conferences in Puerto Rico for almost a decade now, so I've got a really good relationship with the island and the folks there, and we got a pretty good nightly rate at the hotel room this time around too. So, and it's in April, so you get out of hurricane season. It's still cold in many spots. You can come down there and warm up, and yeah, I'd love to have you guys come down. It's a lot of fun down there. It really is a meaningful experience that people walk away with new connections and again, it's all about refreshing, right? It's refreshing, recharging. The work that early childhood providers do is very demanding, and it's much like being a paramedic. It's very thankless. People don't really appreciate what you do. I get cringed when I hear people say, "Oh, you work with those babysitters," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, dude! Like these are not babysitters; these are brain builders. Like 90% of our brain is being built 0 to 5, and a million synapses a second. It's the most active our brain's ever going to be. Every single study that comes out, shows if you get it good in early childhood, you get it good the rest of your life. So the quality is so important, and I get so disgruntled when I hear people, kind of demean what our field does. So that's where I really hope that we can come together. It's a challenging field, and again, as someone that's worked for the United States Senate and done policy and stuff like that, I think it in many ways that we do ourselves a disservice because we kind of carve things up too much, right? We've got, oh, I'm a family child care provider. Oh, I work in early Head Start. Oh, I work in Head Start. Oh, I work at a center. Oh, I work at a franchise. Oh, I work at this. And in many ways, we're kind of weak in our position because we can't just all come together. And I would love to see a time when we can all just embrace it and say, look, I don't care where you work with kids, you're part of this early childhood sector. We all are looking to do the best we can for the children and the families that we serve. And we all have a very important role to play. And we need to stand up and be loud about, pay parity. There's no reason we shouldn't be making the same amount that an elementary or a middle or a high school teacher makes. In many ways, the work is way more demanding, I think, right? So that's kind of what I look forward to. I hope we kind of got there with COVID because like we were essential workers, remember, and everybody loved us. And then I don't know, that just kind of went away one day. And I keep reminding people like, hey, remember during the pandemic, like this was really important stuff. It's still really important stuff. And at the end of the day, it cuts across demographics. Like I don't care if you're a Republican, an independent, a Democrat, who doesn't want the best for our kids, right? So the the argument here from a political standpoint, it's an easy one to win if we could unify and stop kind of the internal snowball fight that we seem to be doing with each other, which isn't really helping all of us, right? So,
Yes.
let's come together. Like we're all doing great work. Let's get recognized for it. Let's get the pay that we need to get for it, and let's get the supplies and the equipment and the funding needed to really make these environments the best they can for kids. That's my goal, and I hope we can get there.
Andy, I was in the car one day driving on the highway, and there was this billboard that said, "If you ate today, thank a farmer." Food comes from the farms, and we forget, where our food comes from sometimes. But if you ate today, thank a farmer. And it made me think, yeah, that's so true. We need to thank the farmers, and the ranchers, and early childhood educators. If you went to work today, maybe you don't have kids anymore, but maybe your coworker was able to come to work because they have reliable childcare or their kids
100%.
are in school. And so it's like, yeah, we need to put that on like bumper stickers, billboards. If you went to work today, thank an early childhood educator because it's a very important workforce that is often overlooked. And like you said, so many challenges. And thank you for what you're doing with the Institute because one of the challenges is emergencies, and your Institute is helping us with those kinds of challenges. So thank you, Andy. And thanks for being
It's
on
my
this
pleasure.
podcast.
Oh, I love it. This was fun. I hope
Thank you,
hope this was
Andy.
enjoyable to folks listening. And certainly, if I can do anything to help, reach out. It's easy. I'm Andy@icp.us. That's my email address. So it's easy to get a hold of me, easy to find me. And honestly, whatever you need, I'd be happy to do our best to try to connect you and get you the resources that you need. And we're all in this together. So let's do the best we can. Let's keep the kiddos safe. Let's make sure you're staying safe too. And yeah, thank you for all the work we do, all the work you do out in the field. It really is meaningful. And by the way, you are the heroes because at night when we do our bedtime stories or when we're eating our family dinner, you're you're who we talk about, by the way. So you are heroes in our home, and I'm sure in many other homes too. So don't get down, don't get disgruntled. You know that the work you do really does matter, and please keep your head up. And we hope you stay in this field for a long, long time because we really do need you.
Yes. Thank you, Andy Rozak. Thank
My
you. Thank you.
pleasure.